While more Americans are living under the federal poverty line, poor people in Venezuela are reaping the benefits of their country's wealth. Those in favor of the social reforms are known as Chavistas. To the opposition forces, Chavistas are supporters of communism and live hard lives under President Hugo Chavez. However, Chavistas insist they're following as part of a regional awakening introduced to them by their president. RT correspondent Jihan Hafiz was in Caracas and has more on the true meaning of a Chavista.
Welcome to Democracy 101 Venezuela style. There is a people's revolution underway here. What is indisputable is that it never would have happened without this man coming to power. The figure, larger than life at times, is President Hugo Chavez. The idea that social reforms prioritize the country's majority poor, activate participatory democracy in this country. A system which invites the poor not just to vote, but to get involved in the political process itself. Supporters of this process, or the president, are known simply and perhaps more vaguely as Chavistas. In the wealthy neighborhoods, it's called communism. But in the slums, it has a very different meaning. Far away from the businesses, the malls, and the fancy hotels in the inner city are the slums of Caracas. This is the La Vega barrio, one of the hundreds in the country. The concepts here come from the Bolivarian Revolution. It was introduced to them by President Hugo Chavez. The idea of participatory democracy happens here. In La Vega, the community leader isn't President Chavez, it's Freddy Mendoza.
Here, during more than 35 years we've been fighting, achieving improvements to our condition of living.
He is the guidance for the community decisions. These are the policymakers of those decisions. They are school teachers and bank tellers and the unemployed. Regardless of who you are or what you do for a living, everyone has an equal say in how this part of the barrio is governed.
It doesn't matter if it's in the middle of the night or raining, whatever time it is, the communal council is present and available for all of the neighbors of the Carretera Negra, for cultural activities, for a sickness, for whatever is needed.
Freddy Mendoza says there's not much funding coming from the government, but if you walk into most homes here, you will see a photo of the president. It's mainly what he symbolizes, not what he represents.
Chavez, as a human, he may make mistakes, but as people, as a person, he cares for other people. People who are around him, the poor people.
And what he symbolizes is a people's first agenda. These projects here don't have anything to do with Freddy Mendoza. They're actually government funded. Over here you have an internet section where people can actually come and use the internet for free. And just down over here is the supermarket. It has the subsidized food. It's another project, one of the missions of the Chavez government. There's also a number of clinics around this area. Most of the doctors are from Cuba. The food at this government supermarket is heavily subsidized compared to regular supermarkets. Cheap food is also accompanied by cheap resources. The nationalization of the country's oil supply has given Venezuelans cheaper gas than water, even transportation. It's truly a spectacular view for the 2,000 residents who commute from the St. Augustine barrios at the top of this mountain down into the city daily. It's a subsidized transportation project implemented by the Chavez experiment, as it's often referred to. It's free to ride, and it's been helping the poor tremendously in the city. Back in La Vega, the people describe how the revolutionary process has given them new opportunities. And as we were filming those benefits, some became quickly suspicious of our presence.
Do you want to know what's going on? Well, the thing is, we want to know why you're filming, because if you guys are from the CIA, and then you will send it to them there in the North American Empire.
Right now we're trying to film these government-funded projects, but a lot of the people here are paranoid of the media. And because we're coming from the States, they're saying that we're state-affiliated in the U.S. and we're running mainstream propaganda that's shining the Chavez government in a bad light. But we're actually here to show you that the government's funding all these projects and that they're beneficial for the people. To understand why the suspicion of the United States runs so deep, one must travel back to the past. Jihan Hafiz, RT, Caracas, Venezuela.
And Jihan joins me now in the studio to talk more about this. So Jihan, for me, this is the first time I'd actually heard the word Chavista, and I guess it's hard for many people to believe that it doesn't mean that you're a die-hard fan of Chavez. How is that word resonating in Venezuela?
Well, Chavista can mean a number of different things to different people in the country. And of course, there are diehard Chavista fans who completely support the president or are madly in love with him. And for the most part, that's the majority of the people. I mean, when you speak to people in Venezuela on the ground in these barrios, they'll actually say, I'm in love with my president. I don't know what other country you can go to. I mean, I'm sure there are definitely countries out there, but this is the feeling that they have for him. And it's not because of his personality or really the way he looks or anything. It's what he's given them. And what he's given them has been incredible social reforms that we saw when we were down there. There are a number of free clinics that we visited. There were also internet places. In La Vega, which was really interesting, is there wasn't much government funding coming from the Chavez government, but that didn't mean anything to the people because Freddy La Vega, with this idea that you have to participate in your community, created a community council. And now anything they do is community work. So if you need to clean the roads, for example, or help build someone's home, or help someone from mudslides, which often happens in the barrios, the community helps, not just the government. So it's action in motion, literally, in Venezuela that is what resonates in the minds of people who identify themselves as Chavistas.
And obviously the opposition in Venezuela is against President Hugo Chavez, and they say that the Chavistas have been brainwashed. Is there any truth to that?
Well, I mean, for the most part, that's been the line of the opposition the day that President Chavez was elected in 1998. They said that he's this communist and most of his supporters are brainwashed because they're poor and he's giving people money. But he's not giving people money. He's giving people social services. He's giving people the opportunity to participate in their democracy. There's a political conscience in Venezuela that's very obvious among anyone there. If you talk to a poor person, they could read you their constitution. They have read the Constitution. President Chavez, when he reformed that Constitution, actually made it mandatory for the people to read it and to read it, in general. And so, people say that the opposition, analysts at least say the opposition use the word Chavista to exploit this mass movement that is Chavista mania.
And it was so interesting to see the pictures of you in the barrio and those people kind of swarming around you. I'm sure it was an interesting experience for you. What was it like to actually be there? And why were those people so suspicious of you?
Well, it wasn't a dangerous situation by no means, and I've been in worse situations in other countries. The reason they were suspicious is because the U.S. has a hidden history in Venezuela, and it leads to the government before Chavez. It's known as the Fourth Republic, and it was a government that was supported by the United States, and the poor people had no say. There was a huge wealth divide. A concentration of the country's wealth was allocated to the country's elites, and they were also running the government. And so that's a major part of it as far as why the people are on board for it.
And I thought it was interesting to see that picture of President Obama. What was that picture about? What do people have to say about him?
Well, it refers to the history, like I mentioned, of the U.S. relationship with Venezuela. And, the people have no hard feelings towards the American people. In fact, John Conway, who was our photojournalist on this trip, was even interacting with people at the barrios. They had baseball caps on with U.S. teams, and they were very welcoming to us. In fact, the only time we faced anything dangerous, which was theft, was in the rich neighborhoods. We had something stolen, not in the barrios. And so the thing is, people there are very friendly to Americans. It's just the policies which they've been affected by, people have been killed by these policies, that which stick with them.
Right. I think it's a very interesting story for so many Americans to hear as well. Jihan Hafiz bringing us all that. Thanks so much.